Did you make the coffee yet? Suzanne Guy, how are we doing today?
Doing great. Good to be back with you.
Yeah, I know you're becoming kind of a regular.
I appreciate that. I so value the topics that you cover.
And we've got an important topic today, Suzanne, and we're kind of diverting from the typical like the walk and talk method.
Right.
We're going to kind of sit down and have a really good discussion because we are going to be talking on the topic of unity.
That's one of the most important topics I feel like in this season that we are in, always, but especially in this season.
Truly. Well, let's have a seat here.
Okay.
So, Suzanne, I've got to ask. I've seen unity come up multiple times in conversations, but I want to know real quick because I want to get a perspective from you. Where is it that you see unity come up in terms of conservative individuals, Republicans, et cetera?
I see the issue of unity coming up with people having a concern that there might be a lack of, or there is a very clear lack of, honestly, amongst the people that are so beautifully chin deep and really being engaged and involved. And these are incredible people who really are go-getters. They have worked hard to clear their calendar as best they can to be as engaged as they can. Some are specific organizations, whether Republican or aligned with certain social justice important issues. But that's where I tend to see the real lack of unity and where the topic keeps coming up that we need to find a way to do better.
Yeah, Suzanne, you're absolutely right. Okay, we are on the same page. That's so good. With me, I've door knocked. I've door knocked a lot.
Yes.
I door knocked for Jake Evans. I door knocked, college Republicans and various other organizations. And, when you talk to the average voter, you never really hear much about the unity. You typically hear like the 5 o'clock news, what's
Right.
going on in the 5 o'clock news, But when you talk to people that are involved, when you go to these political functions of, the typical faces that you see, most often rotating through those, this is a topic that comes up constantly. And it's got to be because we are so fine-tuned, we are so honed in on the inter-party workings that we become almost, how did I say this earlier? Yeah, hyper-focused. Hyper-focused. Yeah,
Yes.
we become so hyper-focused on these little issues that we have within the party. And it's not even just within the party, it's within conservative movements.
Right, right. Well, I will say a few things. Well, first of all, I love that you are hearing the heart of the people. And it's usually those very people that have very busy lives and don't always have the time to be involved on that very in-depth level. So they count on people who do have the time, who have made it, whether it's their career or a lot of volunteer work, who've made it their job to be involved that way. So they look to those people to help them understand what's going on. So I think there's a greater responsibility for those involved in that way to make sure that we're sending a message, not a phony message, a true message, a
Right.
real message that while we have our different lanes that we're running in, that we can come together and support one another and have unity. Otherwise, we're sending a message to the people out there that are looking to a lot of these organizations. Hey, who should I be voting for? What should I be doing? What's going on? We need to be saying we are in this together. We might not always agree, but by and large, we are in this together to champion conservative values.
It's funny, Suzanne. This kind of reminds me of a bit of my military background. So, I worked in like a small team kind of setting, right? And we would have times where we've got to go and brief like the general and or somebody of that capacity so that we get okayed for the mission. And we would come together and we would just give this awesome like report, like this is what we're going to be doing, this is how we're going to do it, this is who's going to be doing what. And that general would be like, oh heck yeah, you guys go forth and conquer. And then of course when we get behind the doors, behind the scenes, that's when we get into a little bit of the controversy, a little bit into like okay guys, I know we said we're going to do it like this, but like, how are we actually going to do it like this? And then you start arguing, right? But you're doing that behind the scenes. You're
Right.
conveying to the general public, to the general, if you will. You're conveying to them unity. You're conveying to them, we are together. We are about this. We are on the ball. And then behind the doors, you're talking about your little differences. You're talking about, the issues that you have. Let's see if we can resolve them. Would you agree that that may be a way to go about things?
I think that would be a very important step in the right direction and a very important way to go about things, because we really do need to, on the grassroots level and on these levels where people are really working hard to make a difference, and people are looking to them to do that because they have the time and they have the organization. I think people, we all need to come together behind the scenes, work things out, agree to disagree where we can, and then go take a united front. I think I shared with you, Will, that I get a lot of different emails, and I also get some emails from the liberal agenda, from the Democrats, because of some of the work that I do with animals. I get some of these Democrat emails,
Yeah.
and I something that I really believe that we can learn from them is um, they do not attack each other within the camp. And if they do, they're doing just what you said. They're doing
Behind
it
closed
behind
doors.
closed doors,
Yeah.
get it worked out, and then come together and fight the good fight. And that's what I feel like we are lacking in such a big way. I love that conservatives are individuals and go-getters. And like you said, entrepreneurs. These are people, not being bound by, I'm just going to follow somebody. They're individuals. But by the same token, sometimes we work against the very things we are trying to accomplish by the internal dissension, and we need to do what you are doing in your military setting, where you go behind closed doors, you work things out, this is where we disagree, and then come together with a united front to fight the good fight for conservative values.
Yeah, Suzanne, you bring up such a great topic, as you normally do.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Credit where credit's due. Like a great example of this, something childish even is like, you go up to a friend of yours, and let's say it's you're like, oh yeah, let's talk on unity, let's be unified, and you're like, you know what, I 100% agree with you. We should totally be unified. And then like, okay, on the count of three, let's both say the same thing, like at the same time, what we should be unified about. We're thinking like we're going to say the same thing, but like, let's say something controversial, like, okay, on the count of three, 1, 2, 3, one person says Georgia voting integrity, and then the other person says, getting Republicans elected. You've just gone from like, oh yeah, let's pursue unity, to now you're going to be sitting at the dinner table arguing about those two things and why one's more important than the other.
So well said.
Yes, so you have conservative arguing against conservative, right? You talk about in your emails, how it's like, okay, Democrats collectively come together, at least perceptionally come
Right.
together, and they go after us, conservative minded individuals. Republicans, like you said, by nature are very individualistic, again very entrepreneurial.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah, it is. They want to see their cause progress. They want to see it go forward. And it's like if they see like one little thing that gets in their way, no matter where that is, just go, no, 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 no. We can't have that. No, no, no. We need to all agree on my thing, my thing. When in actuality, we can all agree on each other's things and then encourage each other to progress, further and further on in their efforts, right? Your
That's
thoughts on that, really?
No, I think that is so well said. And that is what I think there are many of us, you and I, so many of us feel that way in the conservative movement, that we need to do a better job with that. And there's a way to do it. There's a way to do that while still staying true to the cause and that which you support and the lane which you run in, but still come together with your brothers and sisters in the conservative movement and not work against one another. And something that I have such a burden for, Will, and you've heard me share about this, is sometimes I will see emails of Republicans disparaging other Republicans. And I understand we need to have a strong standard that people stand for conservative values, and we need to hold people to those standards. But I think there's a very fine line between holding people accountable and attacking them. And some of the conversations that I've been having recently, I've challenged people. I've said, were you actually there when that legislation was happening? Well, no. And then I challenge them. You just called a whole group of people a pretty strong name, rhino, which we know
Yep.
there are some of those in the Republican camp. But when you're making that blanket statement based on something somebody else said and you haven't done your research, I can tell you firsthand those are not rhinos. And I can say, well, there was a time many years ago when I was not as engaged. Some of it was my own lack, and I regret it. Some of it was just time, and I worked a lot of hours. And I really did look to other people who would fundraise, or this is what they did most of the time, to say, I can't be at the Capitol, so tell me. But as I started to get more involved and take more responsibility, even simple things like making phone calls to my legislators, who, let me tell you, we have an incredible group of Republican legislators in Georgia. These people want to meet with us. They welcome our phone calls. I will tell you, 9 times out of 10, what happens is the only time they ever hear from their constituents is when they get some blanket petition or blanket email that's a generic email, or when someone's complaining. Seldom do they hear from people saying, hey, I'm one of your constituents. I just wanted to introduce myself. These are the things that matter to me. I'll be praying for you. Or if it's not a person of prayer, just wanted to be in touch with you. And I'm going to be, I would like to be following what you're doing, and I'm going to be staying in touch with you about that. So you're starting to build a relationship with the person. And can I tell you, the more I started to get to know these legislators, the more when certain emails or things would come my way or rhetoric would come my way, it was such an opportunity to say, if this were true, I would say, yes, we have work to do helping this person understand the conservative platform. But so often it was not based on truth. And I would challenge people, before we create all this dissension within the party, name calling, can we look at maybe we're misrepresenting somebody? Can we talk to people who've been boots on the ground? No problem if you don't have the opportunity or bandwidth to be at the Capitol or to be engaged in these meetings. That's okay. But could we do some research to make sure that we're operating out of a posture of truth before we start going down a road of, well, they're terrible, and unity all of a sudden is disrupted, and it's not even based on facts or truth. So that is what I want to challenge people. Yes, praise God for the great organizations and Republican Party organizations that we have all across Georgia, and we count on them. But I want to challenge people, when they send you something or they talk about somebody in a certain light, take a moment to do your research as well. Call up that person and say, hey, I'm not even in your district, but I got something that said you voted this way. Before I get frustrated with you, do you have a moment? Could I take a moment of your time just to hear why you voted this way? There's so much that we don't recognize, and I learned that the hard way. So I want to challenge other people, because so much of the disunity I see is often based on misunderstanding and misrepresentation of the truth. Not always. I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus. I'm just trying to challenge people. Don't be like I was, where I just blindly said, hey, this is what you do for a living. You must be at the Capitol, but maybe they're not. You must know what you're talking about. Take the time to make phone calls, to do your own research, or find somebody that you say, hey, I don't have the bandwidth to do this, Suzanne. Would you do this for me and let me know what you found out? What did this person say?
Absolutely, Suzanne. And you talk about representation. We often hear, like, a Georgia legislator, a Georgia senator, but we don't often associate the idea of a Georgia representative as a person avidly in touch and like grassroots with the Republican Party. You are a representation of the Republican Party. If you are avidly all about going to every single function, going to all of these events, etc., when people who have that 9 to 5 job, who come home and take care of kids and maybe have like 30 minutes to watch TV, want to get informed on like how things are going, you have an obligation as a representative of the Georgia Republican Party to convey yourself in such a way that it is professional, that it shows unity, that it shows this brotherhood, this kinship. And yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree with that, Suzanne. And I can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your day to talk with me again. I got to say, I think we had a really productive conversation.
Well, I thank you for being willing to tackle such an important topic that I know we will not solve all the problems within 10 minutes, but thank you for caring enough about the conservative movement, conservative values, to start this discussion. And I hope so many people will chime in and say, hey, how can we all do better? How can we come together? Again, not at the sacrifice of in any way compromising what we feel called to, but still coming together and making sure that we represent people and truth in the right light, that we're representing the facts, that we're representing the truth, and that we come together and have these difficult conversations together.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for talking with me today, Suzanne.
Thank you, Will.
All
This has been a
right.
blessing.
Absolutely.